We first meet Diane as a candidate ghostwriter for Bojack's biography due to her having written a book about the famous Secretariat. Before meeting her, we get to meet Mr. Peanut Butter, a character by which at this point we're made to feel a level of mild irritation towards.
He's so stupid he doesn't realize how miserable he should be.
This feeling is compounded when we find out that this wholesome appearing insightful intellect is being romanced by the simpleton we had quickly grown to loathe.
You two are dating?
Yeah.
You're dating him.
Yes.
This is your boyfriend.
Oh my god.
It seems a common trope that a girl of this nature is intertwined with the likes of a counterpart which is as intellectually stimulating as a rock. In episode 4, we get some insight into why this is the case for Diane. We meet her former boyfriend, Wayne.
Who's Wayne?
I'm Wayne.
A vain intellect, a writer himself for BuzzFeed, with a shared appreciation for higher culture that seems on the surface to be a natural match for Diane.
Oh man, you guys are perfect for each other. Why did you ever break up?
When we first meet Wayne, we find him and the crew in a discussion about the dichotomy they coined as Zoe and Zelda. Derived from Mr. Peanut Butter's 90s sitcom show, the two twins Zoe and Zelda are polar opposite personalities. Zoe, a happy-go-lucky hedonist type, and Zelda, a cultured sensitive whose main trope is to crap all over the going-ons of the Zoes in the show.
Halloween costumes are a gateway to casual racism.
Which begs us to ask, if Diane is a Zelda, should she be matched with another Zelda or a Zoe? In a partner, is it more wise to match with an opposite that complements our own character traits? Or should we seek out the familiar with the risk of amplifying our own shortcomings?
I think we're alike in a lot of ways, and sometimes that's great, but it also means we can bring out the worst in each other.
At the end of episode 4, Wayne makes a final plea to Diane.
I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that you shouldn't be with Mr. Peanut Butter. You should be with me.
Diane wants us to think that her rationale is simply that Wayne is mean and Mr. Peanut Butter is nice.
Sure, you're smart and sophisticated and cool, but you're also mean.
But from Wayne's point of view, we get a glimpse of what is more likely the true impetus of Diane's problematic love life.
You know what your problem is? You're trying to be a Zelda, but you're so obviously a Zoe.
What Diane wants more than anything is to throw away the deep dark troubles of her past and her fragile self.
You can live your happy Zelda life in this happy Zelda town and pretend you're a happy Zelda. But I know you, and this isn't you.
This need to pretend and force herself into pursuing what she deems as high and noble becomes the trope which guides her throughout the series. This life is what she pretends to want, a life that she forces herself to want. At her wedding ceremony, an event ordinarily mired with unfound confidence in the future, we find her rationalizing. She asserts that she was never one that saw herself getting married, and despite her doubts, propelled herself into taking a leap of faith.
It's okay to not know everything. Some things take a leap of faith. Mr. Peanut Butter, I want to take that leap with you.
In Season 4, Todd is pitted into a fake engagement as a tool for furthering the popularity and relatability of Hollywood actress Courtney Portnoy. When considering whether he should proceed with the fake wedding, Diane tells Todd that all marriages are based on a lie.
But it's a lie based on truth. Like, at the center of the farce, there's this nugget of something real and pure.
In this conversation, we get reinforcement of Diane's struggle to pretend and force herself to be happy.
But you have to believe it's still down there somewhere, even if you can't see it. And maybe even the belief in it is more important than the thing itself. But only as long as you still believe it.
These feelings of needing to pretend and needing to force a facade culminate in the famous bellroom scene, which ultimately signals the end of Diane's marriage to Mr. Peanut Butter.
It's messy, and at first glance, it doesn't seem to make any sense. But sometimes, if you squint at it just right, everything lines up, and it's the most perfect, beautiful, amazing thing. But I'm so tired of squinting.
Where many would look at this as being caused by Mr. Peanut Butter not being able to listen or understand Diane's true nature. And although this is not at all unwarranted, a stark review reveals that it is more to do with Diane's limit for pretending to be something that she's not. We can see her go through a number of similar ordeals, especially in her venture into Cordovia. Diane of course pursues this as a way of trying to find meaning and purpose in her life.
I wake up in the morning, and I feel like I have no purpose. And I'm 35, and if I don't make some change in my life, then this is how I'm gonna feel forever.
But when arriving in Cordovia, she realizes that the campaign is a shallow ruse, orchestrated by an egomaniac wanting a new means to pull funding and further his sense of self-righteousness. Distraught by her troubles in Cordovia, she returns early, confines herself to Bojack's residence, where she eventually relents that she wasn't the person she thought she was.
I thought I could go far away and help people and be this best possible version of myself.
And what happened?
I couldn't. I wasn't the person I thought I was.
In Season 5, Episode 2 opens with a scene depicting Diane breaking out into a hysteric fit of tears. She then frantically compiles a travel bag and jumps on a last-minute trip to Hanoi. She tells us that the trip is for herself, for her to find community or some kind of connection. But throughout the episode, we find out her real motivations that night. The night she went to a housewarming party, that was her idea. The night she saw her ex-husband, which she chose to leave, lay his hand on the back of her replacement. A misery of her own making. The trip was never about her finding something noble. It was her pretending once again that the pain that she felt that night wasn't real. It seems that all of her noble pursuits are in a way a mask for a lifetime of unacknowledged despair. The turning point for Diane came from the least expected of places, a letter from Bojack during his time in rehab in Season 6. Before reading this letter, we find Diane filming a documentary series for Girl Cruise, where she attempts to uncover the activities of various criminal organizations. She travels in a two-person team comprising of her and her soon-to-be lover and cameraman, Guy, from Chicago. The two become romantically intertwined during the trip, and when it comes time for Diane to leave to go back to LA, Guy makes a plea for Diane to stay, but purposely does it in a way that is sensitive to Diane's abhorrence of grand gestures.
I'm not that guy who says, Diane, please don't go, I'm in love with you.
Diane laments that she can't stay because there's not enough good in her life.
You have been such a good thing for me. But I can't be with you if you're the only good thing in my life.
While traveling home, there's a voiceover of Bojack reading out a letter he wrote to Diane. He tells a silly story about one of the other persons in rehab and ends by reflecting on his time there so far.
Some days it feels like you're not progressing at all. Other days you think, well, maybe a little. The main thing I think about is how stupid I am that I didn't do this sooner. I wasted so many years being miserable because I assumed that was the only way to be. I don't want to do that anymore.
Unknowingly to Bojack, his words sparked something in Diane. Was she progressing in LA? Was all the years of pain and disappointment worth it? Diane calls Guy and she decides to move to Chicago with him. Her move to Chicago was her first step towards recovery, but her story isn't over yet. Princess Carolyn pulls her back in with a chance to write a novel about anything she likes. She chooses to write a story based on her own life, and for someone so famous for insightfully penning down the lives of others, the process of penning down her own life proves to be excruciatingly defeating. Again, Diane is in a position where she pursues what she has convinced herself that she wants, despite the signs that the pursuit is making her miserable.
You don't have to write this book at all if you don't want to.
Of course I want to.
Okay, I'm just saying, since you started, you've been pretty down, not yourself.
During her process, Guy leaves for a work trip and Bojack shows up out of the blue. The two of them end up in the living room, where Diane finally admits that she may be depressed.
I think I'm depressed.
Yeah?
It started when I was having trouble with my book.
Diane rues, and they break into this conversation.
We're probably gonna break up soon anyway. There's only so long before he gets tired of the real me.
I bought into this idea that I was the thing that couldn't be changed. I wanted to thank you for believing in me when I didn't, and for encouraging me to accept the help I needed.
This conversation is important to Bojack because we realize that he's let go of the idea that he is fundamentally bad and beyond reproach. But it's also important to Diane because we realize that the problem that both of them have is that they have fixed notions of who they are. In the same way that Bojack thinks that he's bad, Diane thinks that she has to be a certain kind of writer and a certain kind of person in order to be happy. In episode 10, we see that after 6 months, Diane has put on quite a decent amount of weight and that she is still yet to write a single page of her book of essays. We then get insight into her boggled thoughts about her father, bullies, her marriage falling apart, the Boston Tea Party protest, and the Japanese art of Katsuki. She tries to write about her damage, but no matter how many ideas of suffering she comes up with, it doesn't seem like enough, and it doesn't come out the way she wants it to. Eventually she finds herself writing a story about a hip young Vietnamese American chick that just spends her time at the mall solving mysteries. An absolute far cry from what she was forcing herself to do, from what she was pretending to be. But this is what Diane did naturally, without any imposition. Of course, she protests, and she does not feel like it was what she was meant to do. Diane blames herself for not being able to write a book about damage, and even Guy suggests that she simply doesn't want to write it.
You were having trouble writing this book when you were depressed, and you're having trouble now that you're not depressed. Is it possible that you just...
What, that I'm just a shitty writer?
No, that you just don't want to write this book.
I do, though. It's just hard.
Guy, concerned for Diane's health, leaks the starting pages of the Ivy Train Food Court book to Princess Carolyn, which was responded to with unabashful praise.
I love the protagonist. I love the world. I love that it wasn't your sad memoir about your boring life.
After much protest from Diane, and a lot of convincing from people she trusts, she decides to finish the Ivy Train Food Court book, and comes to realize the amount of good it can do for people. In the same way that Bojack on Horsing Around rescued her from misery as a kid, she can now do for a new generation. In the same way that Bojack, pursuing achievements that he never really wanted, drove him to madness, it too drove Diane to madness. In the end, doing what she loved for the sake of her own happiness, rather than constantly trying to find closure for the trauma that haunted her past and living up to her expectations that were grounded in her own low feelings of self-worth, is what allowed her to close this tumultuous chapter of her life. What we can learn from Diane is the need to examine our motivations and where they come from. The desire to do good and become better versions of ourselves is a noble desire. But to force ourselves to be persons that we are not, or to do so as a mask for our pain, thinking that it will somehow distance ourselves from it, will only draw us closer to it. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. This is a new channel, so if you like the content, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Thanks.